Picture the shelf first. Not the factory, not the cucumbers, the shelf. 4 feet of cold, refrigerated, or dry goods real estate in a grocery store, sandwiched between Vlasic and Clausen. And somewhere in your head right now, there's a jar with your name on it sitting there. You picture the recipe, the label, maybe a little story about Grandma's brine on the back. That's the fantasy. Here's the reality check. You're not competing to make a good pickle. You're competing for those 4 feet against brands with 50 years of shelf history. And most people who try this lose that fight before they've brined a single cucumber. That's the thing you need to understand before anything else, because it reframes the entire business. You think you're getting into food manufacturing. You're actually getting into a logistics and retail relationship business that happens to move pickles through it. The recipe is the easy part. There are 10,000 solid pickle recipes floating around for free right now. What almost nobody can pull off is getting a grocery chain to hand over shelf space, holding on to that space once they have it, and manufacturing consistently enough, cheaply enough, and safely enough to survive there past year one. The pickle is maybe 5% of the actual challenge. The other 95% is regulatory, mechanical, and relational. Hold on to that idea. We're circling back to it. Let's talk about what it costs to actually get in, because the number in your head right now is probably way off. You're picturing a rented commercial kitchen and a folding table at a farmer's market. That gets you a hobby. It does not get you a factory, and factory is the word we're using here. A real commercial pickle operation, one that can legally supply grocery, which is where the actual volume lives, starts with a facility. You're looking at an industrial lease somewhere between 8,000 and 20,000 square feet, running $8,000 to $25,000 a month, depending on your region. Plus build-out for drainage, ventilation, and refrigeration that can run another $150,000 to $400,000 before a single jar ships. Then the equipment itself. A wash and sort line, a brine tank system, a fill and cap line, a pasteurizer or hot fill setup, and labeling equipment. Buy it used, and you might land a line producing 5,000 to 15,000 jars a day for $300,000 to $900,000. Buy new, fully automated equipment, and that number climbs past $2 million fast. Then come the licenses, and this is where people get blindsided who thought this was just a kitchen operation. You need FDA food facility registration, state processing licensing, and because pickles are legally classified as an acidified food, you need a scheduled process filed through a certified process authority. Essentially, a food scientist signing off that your method is safe against botulism. That review alone can run $3,000 to $10,000 per recipe variant, and you cannot legally sell until it clears. Add liability insurance, typically $15,000 to $40,000 a year depending on revenue and distribution footprint. Add staffing before profitability, line workers, quality control, a plant manager, easily $25,000 to $60,000 a month once you're running 2 shifts. Put it all together, and a real ground-up pickle factory capable of supplying regional grocery is a $750,000 to $2.5 million commitment before your first case sells. And you need 6 to 12 months of working capital in reserve on top of that, because grocery chains pay net 30 or net 60. You're floating the cost of every jar for a month or two before you see a dollar back. The mistake that kills new operators isn't usually the equipment spend. It's misjudging that cash gap. They build the plant, land the big account, and run out of cash waiting on the invoice that was supposed to save them. Now let's get into the 2-number comparison, because this is where the real economics of the industry show up. Picture 2 deals sitting on the table in front of you. Deal 1. A single big contract with a regional grocery chain, say 200 locations ordering a pallet a week each. That sounds massive. That's the deal people fantasize about. Deal 2. A co-packing agreement with a mid-size condiment or hot sauce brand that needs someone to produce their pickled jalapeno line. Smaller and steadier, locked in for 3 years. On paper, deal 1 is the win. It's the bigger, flashier headline. Now walk the actual math. The grocery chain deal typically comes with slotting fees. Money you pay just to get placed on the shelf, running $15,000 to $50,000 per region, plus mandatory promotional discounting several times a year that can eat 15 to 20% of your revenue from that account. And it's cancelable at will. One category reset, one shelf review, and you're out. Down $40,000 in slotting money with a warehouse full of jars nobody wants anymore. The co-packing contract has no slotting fee, no consumer marketing spend, locked-in per-unit pricing, and a 3-year term with renewal built in. Run both scenarios over 3 years, and the boring co-packing deal frequently produces more total profit with a fraction of the exposure. Because you're not fighting for shelf space, you're fulfilling a contract someone else already fought to win. This is exactly why most profitable small and mid-sized pickle producers in this country are quietly doing more private label and co-packing volume than branded retail, even if the Instagram feed only shows the pretty jars with the owner's name on the label. Let's follow $100 of pickle revenue from the shelf back to the owner's pocket, because this is where the picture in your head really falls apart. $100 of jarred pickles at $5.99 a jar is roughly 17 jars sold. The grocery store typically takes 30 to 40% of that as retail margin for the shelf space and the checkout scan, so somewhere between $30 and $40 never reaches you at all. You're left with $60 to $70 in wholesale revenue. Cucumbers, oddly, are one of the cheaper inputs, 8 to 12% of wholesale price, depending on the season and whether you're buying contract-grown or spot market. So call it $6 to $8. Vinegar, salt, dill, and spice blend run another 4 to 6%, or $3 to $4. The jar, lid, and printed label typically run 12 to 18% of wholesale price. Glass is heavy and fragile, and it has only gotten more expensive. Call it $9 to $11. Line labor, from washing to filling to capping to boxing, runs 15 to 20%, so $10 to $13. Freight and warehousing to get product into a distribution center run another 8 to 10%, roughly $6. Add processing fees, insurance allocation, equipment depreciation, and general overhead at around 15%, another $10 gone. Total it up against your $60 to $70 in wholesale revenue and the operating profit that actually lands in your pocket, before taxes, out of that original $100 spent at the register, comes out somewhere between $4 and $9. 4 to 9 cents on every retail dollar. Not 30, not 20, single digits. Now the hidden trap, and for this specific business, it's rarely the recipe or even the regulatory maze. It's customer concentration. Because slotting fees and minimum order volumes are so steep, small and mid-sized pickle producers routinely end up with 40 to 60% of total revenue sitting inside 1 or 2 retail accounts or 1 or 2 co-packing contracts. It works beautifully, right up until it doesn't. A regional chain gets acquired, and the new parent runs a category reset, swapping every regional brand for their own private label overnight. A co-packing client gets bought by a bigger competitor who already has their own pickle supplier and cancels with 60 days notice, which is standard boilerplate in most of these agreements. Either way, you don't lose a customer, you lose half your revenue in a single phone call, while the lease, the equipment loan, and the payroll don't move an inch. This exact pattern played out across the specialty food industry during the last wave of grocery private label consolidation. Regional brands that looked stable on paper lost their anchor account and were gone within a year, because nobody had built a second or third leg to stand on. The operators who survive long-term in this industry deliberately cap any single customer at 20 to 25% of revenue, even when a much bigger contract is sitting right there, tempting them to go all in on one relationship. Let's look at the same factory run 2 different ways, both pulling in $2 million a year, so you can see how much of this margin is actually within your control rather than dictated by the market. In the unoptimized version, ingredient costs run high because they're buying cucumbers on the spot market instead of locking in contract-grown supply. 14% of revenue instead of 9%. Labor is inefficient, overstaffed, with no real line optimization, sitting at 22% instead of 16%. Freight is full retail rate because shipments were never consolidated, at 11% instead of 7%. Overhead and admin bloat run 18%, and slotting and trade spend eat another 12%. That operator lands around 5% net margin, roughly $100,000 of profit on $2 million in revenue, for someone working 60-hour weeks. Now the optimized version. Same $2 million top line, contract-grown cucumber supply locked a year ahead drops ingredient cost to 9%. Cross-trained staff and better scheduling bring labor to 15%. Consolidated freight through a regional distributor drops that line to 6%. Lean shared warehouse overhead holds at 12%. And because this operator has diversified their customer base, slotting and trade spend only account for 6% of revenue instead of 12%, since they're not desperately fighting to defend every single account. That version lands around 15% net margin, $300,000 of profit on the exact same $2 million in sales. Same factory, same category, same customers roughly. Triple the profit, purely from operational discipline that most people never bother building. Now zoom out, because there are industry-level forces reshaping this business right now that have nothing to do with anyone's recipe. Grocery chains are aggressively expanding private label penetration, and pickles are a favorite target because the category is mature, low innovation, and easy for a store brand to replicate. Private label now commands a meaningfully larger slice of the pickle aisle than it did a decade ago, and that pressure squeezes independent brands from the middle. At the same time, the fermented and gut health wave has opened up a real premium lane. Raw, unpasteurized, probiotic pickles command retail prices 2 to 3 times higher than conventional vinegar-brined product, and that segment is growing faster than the mainstream aisle, though it comes with its own cold chain and shelf life complications that conventional product doesn't have to deal with. And on the input side, cucumber growing regions are facing real water and labor cost pressure, meaning the one ingredient that used to be your most predictable input is becoming less stable year over year. Put those three forces together, and the strategic picture gets sharp fast. The mainstream conventional shelf-stable lane gets tougher to profit in every year, while the premium fermented lane and the contract co-packing lane are where the real growth and margin currently sit. So circle back to where this started. You thought you were buying a pickle factory. What you're actually buying is a seat in a much bigger fight over cold shelf space, contract relationships, and operational discipline, where the pickle itself is almost incidental to the whole thing. The real asset was never the brine recipe or the equipment on the floor. It's the locked-in relationships. A 3-year co-packing contract, a distributor who won't drop you, a private label deal that renews on its own. Equipment depreciates. Recipes get copied within a season. Relationships and contracts are the only thing in this business that actually compound over time. Before the verdict, quick ask. If you're finding this kind of breakdown genuinely useful, tap subscribe now, because there's a lot more of these coming, and it actually helps more people find the channel. The honest verdict is this. Walk in chasing the flashy grocery placement with no operational discipline and no plan for customer concentration, and this business will eat your capital and spit you out in under 2 years. It happens constantly. It's practically the default outcome. Walk in treating it like a manufacturing and logistics operation that happens to produce pickles, keep your customer base spread out, and run your cost structure like the optimized version we just walked through. And this can be a genuinely durable, unglamorous, cash-generating business for a very long time. It comes down to whether you're building a brand or building an operation, because only one of those actually survives contact with the grocery industry over the long run. If this was useful, stick around and hit subscribe. More of these breakdowns are coming, and having you here for the next one genuinely helps.